Good morning, everyone. What a special, amazing Sunday morning today. My name is Reverend Dana Lightsey, and it is an honor and delight to be with you on this very special day. And whether today is your first special Sunday here or a countless Sunday, we welcome you to our beloved community. Please take note of our announcements. Today, in case you hadn't already guessed, we welcome back two very special guests, Reverend Laurel Liefert, who was the beloved settled minister here at Namakwa for 11 years, from 2011 to 2022. She will, yeah. Laurel will ever be an official part of this congregation since you made her minister emerita when she retired in 2022. So she's on the books for good, friends. This is her first time back since her retirement, and we're super delighted that she's here, are we not? Yes, okay. And as many of you recall, in preparation for Laurel's retirement and transition, you chose to bring in an intern for the first time for this congregation. Little did you know how blessed that you would be to have Dr. Clare Hammoor be your intern minister for 2 years, from 2021 to 2023. Yeah. Personally, it has been an honor and delight to work with Clare for one of those years, for the second year, and now today he is back as well. So welcome, welcome, yeah. And by the way, this is just part of our celebration. We are also having a special homecoming potluck picnic at Kathy Hartman's house and Nathan's house, just 3 blocks away. And Tam tells me she's got signs up and everything. Awesome, Tam. So I hope you all can join us after the service. There's no coffee hour. Well, coffee hour is at Kathy's house. Okay. It's all happening at Kathy's house. Okay. I'd also like to mention that we do have open mic night coming up on Friday night at 6:30. And it's going to be a fun night of music and poetry and other various performances. And rumor has it that Reverend Laurel is going to be one of our guests at open mic night. So come on down. And next week we will be celebrating Pride for our worship service, so I hope you come back next week. And a special shout out and thank you to all those who are part of today's service. Our director of music, Ryan Marvel, and our amazing accompanist, Slip, and our wonderful choirs performing 2 amazing songs today. And our tech crew, Clay and Tam, are running sound and audio and Zoom and everything up there. Thank you both. And to everybody, I don't even know who it all includes, who helped make the picnic happen and helped make today happen, and our ushers and everyone. So please give them a round of applause. Thank you. And I would like to invite Laurel and Clare to join with me in our opening words. This is by Mary Oliver, "When I Am Among the Trees." When I am among the trees, especially the willows and the honey locust, equally the beech, the oaks and the pines, they give off such hints of gladness.
I would almost say that they save me, and daily. I'm so distant from the hope of myself, in which I have goodness and discernment, and never hurry through the world, but walk slowly and bow often.
Around me, the trees stir in their leaves and call out, "Stay a while." The light flows from their branches and they call again. "It's simple," they say, and you too have come into the world to do this, to go easy, to be filled with light, and to shine.
My friends, I invite us to share our own light and shining by saying our morning affirmation. Love is the spirit of this church, and service its call. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. I invite you now to share the spirit of love with those around you by greeting each other, and good morning.
This is a really lovely book, translated from a German children's book called Ludwig and the Rhinoceros. And on the front page, we see Ludwig sitting on his bed with a really bright rhinoceros right next door. you up to in here, Ludwig? Who are you talking to? A rhinoceros. A rhinoceros? There's no rhinoceros in here. That's just your imagination. He's right behind you. And there we see Ludwig, the rhinoceros, and Ludwig's dad, incredulous. He says, I don't see a rhinoceros. Ludwig says, it's in the dresser. And there's the rhinoceros with some of Ludwig's underwear on its horn. Dad says, there's no rhinoceros in here. And Ludwig says, it's under the bed. And there we see the rhinoceros under the bed with Ludwig. Dad says, there's no rhinoceros in here, Ludwig. Quit pulling my leg. Oh, now it's sitting under the desk, says Ludwig. And there's the rhinoceros squished underneath the desk. Ludwig, this room is much too small for a rhinoceros. Rhinoceroses are at least 6 feet long. Well, there are little rhinoceroses too. There's neither a big rhinoceros nor a little rhinoceros in this room. I've checked everywhere. Only the zoo has rhinoceroses. Well, then prove it. I don't see a rhinoceros. That means there is not a rhinoceros in here. And there we see Ludwig's dad sitting on the rhinoceros. Ludwig says, do you see the moon? And Dad says, I can see it from here. The moon, it's on the other side. And Ludwig has binoculars and he says, is the moon there? And Dad says, of course the moon is there. What kind of question is that, Ludwig? And Ludwig says, but you can't see it? And Dad says, that's right. I can't see it from here. Ludwig says, so how do you know it's there then? And Dad says, I've seen the moon 1,000 times before, so I know it's there. And there we see the dad and Ludwig and a giant rhinoceros. Ludwig says, can you prove that the moon is there? I can't prove it, but I know it. And that's how I also know there's no rhinoceros in here, because there's never seen a rhinoceros in here before. There's never been a rhinoceros here. There will never be a rhinoceros here. But you can't prove it. I can't prove it. You see, I'm not lying. And there they are, the three of them, squished in the window of the house, looking out at the moon. Oh, Ludwig, what are we going to do with you? I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to be a philosopher, says Ludwig. And there we see the rhinoceros, bigger than ever. And the dad says, good night, Ludwig. And then we see Ludwig with one eye open, still in bed as Dad leaves. And Ludwig says, good night, rhinoceros. Good night, Ludwig! Send our young people out to RE.
The relationship between a Unitarian Universalist minister and a congregation is strange and unique. We do not claim to be any more divinely inspired than anyone else. Unless you do you guys, oh, just checking, okay, great. Okay. Okay. And yet we serve the congregation by delving deep into ourselves and our own personal life experience, and to wrestle with the great questions of life and concerns, and all that we can do to lead and care for the congregation. And we do our best to help each of you work through your life's challenges and continue to find your hope, faith, meaning, purpose, belonging, and love as individuals and as a congregation and even as a denomination. As together, week by week, we lift up that which is both intimate and ultimate. We grow that which matters the most, the deep bonds of love and care. This is not a job like any other. You know it. And you, my dear Namakwa Unitarian Universalist friends, know exactly what I am talking about because you have had the privilege of having these two brilliant, thoughtful, and loving ministers serve this community with their hearts and souls, and you have been better for it. Reverend Laurel served this young 11-year-old congregation for 11 years, beginning in 2011. Did y'all? It was an interesting thing to discover. I love hearing about Laurel's ministry with you and the fondness so many of you carry from those times together. She cared deeply and gave all of herself, and it shows in the community that you have become. And you struck gold again when you managed to get Dr. Clare Hammoor to be your ministerial intern. For 2 years, 2021 to 2023, and Clare's insightful, talented brilliance was and is matched by his great, big, loving heart and giant hugs. After building these deep, loving, and meaningful relationships, it has been so hard to say goodbye when a minister retires or one's internship is finished. This is made even more difficult and painful by the rule that ministers are not allowed to be in communication with their former congregation for 2 years as their settled minister and for 1 year as an intern. This rule is actually very necessary to help the congregation move on and build new relationships with new ministers. And yet, having left a number of congregations myself, I know all too well how painful this rule is. That's why I thought it was important to invite both Laurel and Clare back for this homecoming. 2 years have passed since Laurel's retirement and 1 year since Clare's leaving, so now it is my hope that we welcome them both back with open arms and loving hugs, remembering and renewing the bonds between us, along with honoring life's progression of life for all of us. So may today be a healing moment of homecoming, and may the light of our chalice burn brightly as a symbol of the love, the hope, and the light of Laurel's and Clare's ministry, and all who have ever ministered and all who will ever minister for you in the past, today, and in the future, within our walls and from afar. And now, as a part of our ministry, and as the way we support our ministry, we will take our morning offering. And as you know, half of our donations this morning will go to an organization to support a local nonprofit. For last month and this month, the next 2 months, we are giving our half plate to the Big Thompson Watershed Coalition, as a part of our shared values to honor the interdependent web of all existence as we covenant to protect the earth and all beings from exploitation. The Big Thompson Watershed Coalition's goal is to bolster the health and integrity of this critical river system for the wild and the natural communities that depend on it through on-the-ground conservation projects.
I arrived at a big conference room in Oakland, California. Nearly 100 nurses crammed onto chairs in the perimeter of the room, not sure what was about to happen next. They were eager and chatty, and I felt like I was home. Amidst all this energy, one woman found a way to be alone, to have breakfast sitting against a wall on the ground. Her name was Maria. Her empty eyes glanced around the room, and she kept to herself. Over the last 5 years, I've been creating and leading wellness workshops for healthcare providers. We spent the day playing and reflecting and sharing and being vulnerable. We spent the day finding ways forward through unimaginable crises that stacked up on top of very long shifts. I've come to think that that day we were trying to find hope, even though we couldn't see it. These workshops are a lot like my work in prison, except out here I get to bring fun materials for us to play with. For this workshop, 100 nurses became astronauts in search of something that didn't exist. They wrapped each other in huge chairs of paper, buckled themselves into their suits with tape, created helmets from cardboard boxes. It was an absurd kind of magic, one that freed us from crowded hospitals and tragedies we've been trying so hard to avoid. But for a brief moment, we came together, and when the music was right and the lights washed over us in blue wonder, we were floating in space. I remember glancing over and seeing Maria. She was floating too, smiling like being enveloped in a warm hug. Her eyes sparkled, her arms outstretched as her fingers danced in the hands of someone that I couldn't see. She played with everything she had. And after our astronaut adventure, after our search for something that didn't exist left us empty-handed, we floated back down to Earth. Crinkling and sweating, panting, we were spent. We laid on the ground, and Maria began to sob. Big tears streamed down her face as she landed back in this world. My co-leader, Tara, checked in with her during the break. "I was really there," Maria said through tears. "I was floating in space." Maria told us that a few months earlier, her son had taken his own life, and that she'd been so incredibly alone, so distant from the hope of herself, But for the first time in a long, long time, when she was in space, she reached out and she touched him, because her son loved space. When he was little, he dreamed of being an astronaut. That day, Maria held her son again. I couldn't see him. I couldn't see the intergalactic traveler sojourning in Northern California, uninvited and yet so wholly welcome. When Maria reached out and touched her son that day, she reached out and found hope. Hope is a thing without gravity, which means that sometimes it just floats away. It goes far beyond our sight, but like the moon, we know it's there. This last year, I needed a lot of hope. A month after I left Namaqua, after I lost all of you, a few months after putting on the biggest show of my life in prison, 6 years after building a program in Colorado from the ground up, 12 years after I started teaching inside, my prison work in Colorado disappeared. And with it, one of the biggest purposes I'd found in life. Political winds changed. And people who used to support me and cheer me on turned the other way. And friends disappeared, not because they wanted to, but because I wasn't allowed to talk to them for a year. Maybe that's just too much for today, but it's also not nearly enough. Why love the world so fiercely when it doesn't love you back? I asked this question a whole awful lot this past year, and I found that there was no answer I was happy with. So instead, I decided I had to figure out how to live the answer. I decided to choose freedom from the joys and sorrows that come to pass every day. The great theologian Richard Rohr talks about real spiritual experiences as those that leave you feeling more free than when you began. So for my birthday this past year, I promised myself that when I was faced with decisions or new opportunities, I'd first ask the question, does this make me feel free? If it does, then I'll take it. Freedom is a practice that left me open to hope. Yet there's so much beyond my control. When hope arrived for Maria that day, I had no idea she would be one of the hundreds of people that had taken that workshop. I had no idea what her story was, or just how much she needed to be floating in space. But that day, unintentionally, surprisingly, the astronaut play I'd created gave her hope. And together, in the arrival of her son, we were both free. I couldn't have planned it better. Hope arrived unexpectedly that day, and Maria was ready for it. We couldn't see it, but we knew it was there. Perhaps hope is really hard to pin down because it's just not natural. Feminist political activist, prison abolitionist Angela Davis said this year, hope doesn't exist in the world. It's something we have to create. My friend, the poet Ashley Cornelius, says that hope is actually a lot like a bubble machine. Its magic is manufactured. But that doesn't mean it's inauthentic. It just means we have to work for it. And this year, I had to work for it. I built a new home by practicing freedom. I found a new job, leading learning for a national nonprofit that supports people in prison through writing. I bought a bike. I co-founded a new company which supports people in prison as those coming home getting jobs. I kept working with healthcare providers. I deepened friendships and made new ones. I ran a wild, muddy obstacle course with my father who has Parkinson's. And I grieved. And through it all, that elusive feeling of hope was there because I kept choosing freedom, which isn't easy. In fact, there are many days that I just struggled to get up, to take care of my partner who was grieving. There were nights that I didn't want to end, but when the dawn broke, I woke up each day and I said, wow. Sometimes earnestly, sometimes sarcastically. Wow. How incredible it is to be alive in this moment, through this sorrow and this joy. When I needed to nurture hope, I found new ways to be free. I looked for inspiration. I was in a prison in Oklahoma this past week teaching a workshop for women who are incarcerated there, and I learned that when women go home from that prison, they have their photo taken in front of the main entrance wearing a black t-shirt emblazoned with the words, "Not today, Satan." Sometimes hope doesn't happen in the arriving. Sometimes it comes leaving and letting go. I was leading another workshop for nurses just a couple weeks ago, and this time it involved plastic sea creatures. We danced and played and made silly content for sea creatures exercise videos. But as we played, we learned the sea creatures were getting sick. We would need to return them to the sea. And I rolled out a huge sheet of mylar in that conference room that covered the ground, shimmering in light. And one by one, as Kenny G's version of My Heart Will Go On played, I cranked the bubble machine to full blast, and those nurses so gently put their creatures back in the sea. And afterwards, when we came out of that play, someone else was crying, with big tears rolling down her cheeks. She told the group that her father had died 5 years ago, and she'd lost hope because she never let him go, even though he wasn't there anymore. But that morning, when she put her starfish on the mylar, as she watched it float away in a shimmer of light, she told us that's when she finally let her father go. She said for the first time in a long time, she felt hopeful again. Hopeful because she was free. Hope had called her back home. Joys and sorrows pass, but freedom and hope can remain if we're willing to do the hard work. It's an absurd kind of magic that taught me freedom keeps the lights on in a home made out of hope. May it be so.
Happy Father's Day to all of you fathers. Some fathers are not with us today because their families wouldn't let them. And so, hello to all of you. And I am so happy to be here. You know, joys and sorrows abound. We've all been through a lot since we've been together. But yesterday there was a Namakwa booth at Pride in the Park. I saw those little rainbow flags that were on 4th Street. That was a delight. Of course, this is just over the top wonderful. So one of the things that UU congregations do to weave a tapestry of love that we call community is to actually take time each Sunday to share our joys and sorrows. Claire, I was so moved by the way that you said, how is it that I can love the world so fiercely when it doesn't love me back? And I think all of us feel that way sometimes, but being together, we belong together, and together we do have hope. There are different ways that congregations do joys and sorrows, and I certainly know from my time here that we take time to come up and speak into a microphone. Today I'd like to try something a little bit different. The congregation in Oakland does something I think rather unique, which is that after a bell sounds, and I don't have a bell, but I'll make a bell. Here is a bell. After this bell sounds, I will invite you to speak aloud, or maybe whisper, or perhaps just say in the silence of your heart, people who you're thinking about, who you want to celebrate, or remember, or memorialize. And if it works, there's this cacophony of beautiful sound as your voices blend. And it's a kind of music. And then I will end, and we'll have a moment of centering and silence. So are you willing to do it that way today? No? Did someone say no? Well, come on, let's just try it. Okay, so I invite you to speak out loud what is in your heart. You are in my heart. And our sons, and our kitty cats, and of course there's sorrows in the world. And, for all that has been spoken, and for all that remains in the silent sanctuaries of our hearts, may we all know that we are held in the loving embrace of this community. And now to fully arrive, after I do a reading by Wendell Berry, let's just sit together in silence for a moment. And maybe quietly say, wow. We clasp the hands of those that go before us and the hands of those who come after us. We enter the little circle of each other's arms and the larger circle of lovers whose hands are joined in a dance, and the larger circle of all creatures passing in and out of life, who move also in a dance to a music so subtle and vast that no one hears it except in fragments. Now remain seated as we sing together over my head. coming back to Namakwa and Loveland like this, I've felt like a pilgrim returning to a sacred site. And it has been very, very emotional for me. And I want to start by expressing a tremendous amount of gratitude. First to you, Dana, for inviting Claire and me back to do this service. Yes, I know it's been 2 years since I left. It's been 1 year since Claire left. But did you know most ministers may not do something like this? You weren't required to do something like this. But I think inviting Claire back, to me, indicates that you have a generous heart. And also, it tells how secure you feel, and also how much you care about this congregation. So thank you, Dana. And Claire, having you as Namakwa's first ministerial intern was definitely a gold mine. It was a gift. You know, our weekly conversations that last year, and then how easy it was to collaborate, creating worship together, was just pure delight. And I was so pleased how the congregation fell in love with you. I also recognize what a blessing it was for you to continue for a second year after I left. It provided some continuity for the congregation that I think is rare for a congregation in transition after a long, loving, settled ministry. So now, here we are together again, and I thank you, Claire. And Ryan, from the very beginning of my ministry here, I recognized your musical gifts as a choir director. When I first came, the Namakwa choir was very small. It was a handful of mighty people who loved singing. It was directed by a volunteer named Donna Ammons, who did have some training, but she also was a choir director while she played and accompanied the choir while singing. And I really wanted some magnificent music at my installation, and so I asked Ryan to help with the music. This was in 2012. And one of my friends, Stefan, came out with our musical group from Oakland, and his name is Stefan, and Ryan and Stefan collaborated together and did create absolutely beautiful music for the installation. So, Ryan, both you and I have been through a lot since 2012. But when Namakwa finally had enough money to hire a professional choir director in 2021, you brought your musical gifts here. I will never forget this sanctuary filled with such glorious music during the best Christmas Eve service that I ever had here. It was absolutely magical. And then for my farewell service in June of 2022, once again, you and Stefan worked together to co-create your musical magic. I can picture the choir in the balcony and all of us singing together. Everything is holy now. Everything is holy now. So now, 2 years later, wow, this choir. Wow. Thank you, Ryan, and thank you, choir. And thank you, Slip. It's good to meet you. And so now, good people of Namakwa, I wonder whether you have any idea how the blessing of our shared ministry continues to ripple out. Thank you for the bottom of my heart for some of the most meaningful years of my life. I loved getting to know you. I loved working with brilliant, dedicated lay leaders, celebrating with you, grieving with you, radiating love, peace, and justice out into our community. When I left, I was almost 72, and I assumed that as wonderful as it was, my time serving as the minister of a UU congregation was over. So I thank you again for the gift that keeps on giving, because life is so interesting. After my retirement, I moved back to the Bay Area in California to join my family and longtime friends. Being reunited with my sons, or our sons, in the Bay Area had a sense of coming full circle. And coming full circle will be one of the themes of this little homilette that I'm offering to you today. Returning again, like a pilgrim. As T.S. Eliot wrote, the end of our exploration will be to arrive where we started and to know the place for the first time. So I'd like to take a few minutes to recap the explorations, the journeys that the Liefert family has taken since 2011, when Francie and I first moved here and I became your minister. So when Francie and I left California back in 2011 to move to Loveland, both of our sons, Marcus and David, were still living in California. And we felt very odd. It was so counterintuitive because usually it's the children, not the parents, who leave. But after we left, our sons both left as well. Our older son, Marcus, followed his call to ministry. Like me, Marcus's call to UU ministry was rooted in our experience at First Unitarian Church of Oakland. Our family started attending the church in 1991 when Marcus was 4. We were inspired by the ministry of a husband and wife team, Rob and Jan Eller-Isaacs. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me. So Marcus's wings, his ministry, took him and his wife Emily to Rochester, New York, where our grandson Henry was born, then to Vancouver, British Columbia, then back to the Bay Area. Marcus and Emily divorced, but then last year Marcus remarried a wonderful woman, Caitlin, whom he'd met in 11th grade at the Shakespeare Festival in Ashland, Oregon. Another beautiful full circle. So now Henry is 8 and will go into 3rd grade. Caitlin is the drama teacher at Berkeley High School. And Marcus was recently installed as the minister of the Unitarian Universalist Church of Berkeley. Our younger son, David, followed us to Colorado, where he received his Bachelor's of Science degree from CU Boulder. Then he went to the University of Wyoming, where he received his PhD in geology. But then David also moved back to the Bay Area, coming full circle. Now he's the water resource manager of a green belt of over 65,000 acres in the greater Santa Cruz Mountains area. He lives with his girlfriend Anna and their 3 dogs in Menlo Park. Francie and I now live with our 2 cats, Jack and Woody, who were rescued from the roof of a grill in Fort Collins when they were kittens. The 4 of us live in a condominium in Richmond, which is north of Berkeley, where we raised our sons. We have a beautiful view of the bay. When I moved back to the Bay, I wasn't looking for another ministry. But last year I was asked to consider serving as a part-time contract minister at my home congregation at the First Unitarian Church of Oakland. Their minister had resigned without notice in March of 2022, just as they were emerging from the pandemic, and they were struggling. After learning more about the state of the church and what they were asking me to do and talking it over with Francie, I said yes. So last summer, I started serving as minister of a UU congregation again. It has been healing for both me and the congregation. As most of you know, my last year at Namaqua, I was suspended from the UU Ministers Association, the UUMA. It's a long and complicated story, and I still plan to pursue some of the issues that were involved. But I want you to know that last fall, after completing a course, I was reinstated in the UUMA in good standing. Since my reinstatement, I have been helping to organize worship for the retreats of the Pacific Central District Unitarian Universalist ministers. I meet monthly with a group of UU women where we do theological reflection together. I used to do both of those things before I came here, and now I come back again, full circle. Return again to the land of your soul. I want you to know that although I'm not your minister anymore, Dana is, you are with me still and always will be. Here's some tangible signs of our remaining connection. In my office at the Oakland Church, I have the painting that Leo did of the church on that special Christmas Eve service I mentioned earlier. In my study at home, I have the black and white drawing of the church that Carol Barton did, and the framed Minister Emerita proclamation, which is one of my most cherished possessions. On my piano, I have the little Jane D. Decker heart that was given to me as a farewell gift. And here is the photo Dana may have shared with you after she visited Francie and me at our home when she was in California for a Sufi conference. You'll see behind us the painting of Yosemite Falls that Jennifer Klein and some others did as a surprise for my installation. And I remember walking in and seeing that painting, and I just burst into tears. I was so moved that people knew and honored my love for Yosemite. And now coming back here and seeing the Rockies yesterday as we drove from the airport, I think wow is one of the themes of today. Yeah. What I have learned is that when you're part of a congregation, whether as a minister or a member or an intern, well, you were a minister or a friend, your heart will break. My heart broke when Jan and Rob Eller Isaacs, our ministers in Oakland, left us to go be ministers in St. Paul, Minnesota. I had no idea that beloved ministers left. My heart was broken many times here as people died and moved away, and then it broke again when I realized it was time for me to leave. In the 2 years since I've seen you, I know your hearts have been broken, and my heart has been broken again and again, many times, including when first Rob and then Jan died of cancer at age 71, just after they'd retired. But I fiercely believe that their inspiration and ministries live on in me and in my son Marcus and in my friend Lydia, who is here today. And you live on in me, as I hope I live on in you. Remember what I said when Dana invited me to surprise you on Zoom on Claire's last day here? I introduced an audacious concept, which is that Unitarian Universalists are polyamorous. Right? What this means is that ministers like me can love more than one congregation. Congregations like you can love more than one minister. There's an abundance of love here. And although I don't really believe in destiny, I do think that life moves in mysterious and sometimes surprisingly beautiful ways. Maybe it was a kind of destiny that brought me here to Loveland back in 2011. And maybe it was destiny that brought me full circle back again to serve the congregation in Oakland that inspired me to go into ministry. In Oakland, I learned to love the faith of Unitarian Universalism and felt my call to become a minister inspired by Jan and Rob. And then I was called here where my ministry skills were honed by my time with you. And now I've returned to the Oakland congregation as a seasoned minister to help heal the congregation that Rob and Jan and so many of us loved. You know, when I first came here, I kept talking about Oakland. Now guess what? I think they're kind of sick of hearing about you. in my 35 years as a UU, I've seen congregations at their best and their worst. I've seen ministers at their best and their worst, and still I choose to stay. And so in this homilette, I now come full circle. I began in gratitude. I end once again in gratitude. I love you all. I carry your heart with me. And I thank you for loving me and for loving Dana and Claire and Slip and Ryan and loving each other. There's a Shaker song that we sang both at the installation and then at my farewell service. It goes, love ye, love ye, love ye one another. And so now we will sing together. Love calls us on. As Claire shared with us, hope calls us on. This faith calls us on. As joyful pilgrims, now we rise. Life calls us on. Life calls us on.
We invite you to join us. This is a song by Jason Shelton, written for congregation and choir as your guide. You'll figure it out as you go along. It's kind of repetitive. The lyrics are on the screen. Life calls us.
Words and deeds of those before us, waking here to keep us strong. Blend our voices in the chorus of creation's living song. Courage bids us lift our eyes upward to the shining skies. Hope calls us on. Hope calls us on. Loyal guides in love and duty, lead us where the trusted light. Blessed are those whose inward beauty shows the path of truth and right. Honor is their earthly prize. By their work we realize faith calls us on. has made us free. And the Spirit's gracious power, dream of good that yet shall be. Bright the path before us lies. Joyful pilgrims now we rise. Life calls us on. 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 Life calls us on.
So, if you've been to a service with me, you knew that wow was like a Chekhov's gun. It's got to come back. Like it wasn't a one and done. So we're going to end in a way that I really love ending a workshop. And so I'm going to invite everyone to stand again. Sorry, right as you sat down. And we're just going to say the word wow over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. Because it is amazing that we get to be alive. Take a look around at these beautiful people we're here with. It's amazing that you showed up today for yourself, for everybody here, and that we get to have this one magical ride together. And so we're going to start really, really small, whispering, until we get so loud that someone comes across the street to check on us. And then we're going to go all the way back down out in a whisper. And as we do, Laurel and Dana are going to give you a little bubble blessing. So just with deep gratitude for this beautiful day, let's start. Let it land with a big breath in. And let it go.
Remember what you do? It's a blessing you were born. And it matters what you do. What you know about God is a piece of the truth. Let the beauty in love be what you do. And you don't have to do it alone. It's a blessing we were born. And it matters what we do. What we know about God is a piece of the truth. That the beauty we love, be what we do. And we don't have to do it alone. And we don't have to do it alone. We don't have to do it alone. And we don't have to do it alone. Cha-cha-cha. Oh.
Thank you, Ryan.
For everything.